This video is for AQA A-Level Economics and to provide advice on examination technique regarding data response. So to begin with, Section A on papers 1 and 2, so micro and macro, is known as the data response. So in this section of the paper, the data response means that you have to respond to the data. Now, if we consider the mark scheme, to achieve the higher marks, you must include good application to the given contexts, and analysis has to be well focused. And therefore, to achieve this, you must respond to the data which is presented to you in the extracts, because if you don't, then how can your analysis be focused and how can it be applied? So what I've done, I've selected a past paper question, which I believe is perfect in considering the technique that's needed for data response questions. Also a question which I think many students would find challenging, because what I'm trying to show is how helpful the extracts are. Not only in terms of getting that level 5, but just in terms of directing you in how to answer the question. So it really shows how the data helps. So I'm going to go through the whole process. So starting from the very beginning, and the beginning is the most important, and that's fully ensuring you have interpreted the question. So step 1, let's break the question down. Now, you know, with a 25 mark question, the command term is always going to be assess or evaluate. And the context is the UK, but the context is the UK in this situation that's been presented to you. The focus, well, actually, in this question, there's 3. There's monetary policy, there's exchange rate systems, and there's macroeconomic performance. So you have to consider all 3 or you are not tackling the demands of the question. So once you believe that you recognise what the question is asking, then create your structure. So step 2 is structure. So what I've done is I've created option 1, option 2. Option 1, yes, monetary policy should be focused on the exchange rate systems. And option 2, no, monetary policy shouldn't be primarily focused on exchange rates. So these 2 steps are absolutely crucial, as often students just put pen straight to paper and do not spend enough time fully recognising what is being asked and how to answer it. And the biggest mistake you can make on a 25 mark question is to misinterpret the question. So now you have the structure in mind, you understand what the question is asking, you can now return to the case study. Now, I'm sure you've already read the case study once, and you'll have needed extract A for the first 2 questions, you'll have needed extract B for the 9 marker, and now the question for the 25 marker does reference extract C, but the difference being, for the 25 marker, you need all of the extracts. You need A, B, and C. And when you return to this case study, after reading the question and understanding the question and creating a structure, now you need to read the case study with purpose. And that's absolutely crucial. Because when you read with purpose, then you can start to create a plan as you actually read the extracts. Now, again, of course, you can pause this video and you can read the case study yourself. But what I've done is I've just shown you via 2 colours. So I've done just a peach colour and I've done a yellow colour just to highlight my 2 options from earlier. So option 1, of course, was yes, it should be primarily focused on exchange rates in terms of monetary policy, and option 2, it shouldn't. So my yellow is option 1, and my peach is option 2. And as you can see, when we're looking at extract B, look at how many points I'm starting to get in terms of my structure as evidence. I've even got, in orange, an evaluation point. If you look at extract C, even more. So you can already see how much evidence there are. Now I'm just going to return to extract B because I'm just going to make a point in terms of that evaluation point that I've highlighted. And it was regarding the productive capacity of the UK. Because how can you answer this question on macroeconomic performance if you do not consider their current performance and how in the context the UK is actually performing? So if you miss this sentence, then your answer is going to be contextually limited. So this is the part of the case study that I'm referring to in terms of productive capacity. And as I've just said there, can you consider the UK's macroeconomic performance contextually without focusing on how they perform in the given situation? As these economies begin to reach their productive capacities, so therefore must consider the impact on price level. Now, if you're closing on your productive potential and your productive capacity, then obviously you're going to experience demand pull inflation with any additional increase in aggregate demand. So if you're trying to improve your current accounts, which the case study suggests, then that's probably going to cause an increase in AD. So what's more important, the current account or stable prices? So if you're going to use monetary policy in terms of managing that price level, then that might harm international performance. If you don't focus on inflation, then I suppose you could argue, will that harm international performance anyway? So that sentence there is absolutely crucial in terms of how to answer that question. Now, another point, and I've just been marking some essays recently, and I've seen introductions that are just too long. We're talking like a half a page, and I don't want you to spend too much time on your introduction, because really, what is it going to achieve? It might get you some AO1, but I'd expect you to show AO1 throughout anyway. Now, what I'm going to do in this model answer that I'm giving you is I'm going to highlight everything in red that comes from the evidence of the case study. So even in the introduction, even the definition of monetary policy is in the case study, it's in the extract. Now, that's not to say it always will be, but by reading the case study with purpose, you make your job easier, because then you don't have to think of some really, really technical definition, because you've got it. And the other thing that I've added is the exchange rate part, which is part of the question anyway. So let's look at point 1. The first analytical argument, again, you can see the amount of red highlighted, all coming from the case study. Now, again, as I said before, feel free to pause the video and read it. Now, the next piece of advice is regarding diagrams. So you can see on this slide that I do refer to a diagram in terms of demand 1 to demand 2 and P star. Now, the one thing that I will say, don't draw a diagram for the sake of drawing a diagram. Don't treat it like a tick box exercise that you feel like you have to do. Because when that happens, the chances are the diagrams will be poorly used. And for example, in a 25-mark question, a diagram should not be used to simply show knowledge, as it'll be a waste of time. Instead, it should be used to apply your knowledge to the given situation, and in doing so, it'll support your analysis. So in mine, I've demonstrated Switzerland's price ceiling, as it says in the case study, but I've also used the diagram to show how they avoid the Swiss franc from appreciating. Now, it's also important that you evaluate throughout. So we've got the diagram here, but I'm also going to just highlight where I've started to evaluate. Because when aiming for level 5, the mark scheme does highlight that evaluation should be throughout and then in your final conclusion as well. So what I've done is I've underlined evaluative consideration in that main body, and you'll see that on other slides as well. So, returning to what I said about ensuring you recognise the current performance, because you assess future policy, and this can be seen in this diagram here. So what I've done, I've drawn a diagram to show that we have closed in on our productive capacity, like it says in the case study. And what I've put is, for example, maybe P1 is on target, or maybe P1 is starting to exceed target. It depends on how you want to put it. But if there's an AD shift caused by the target of using monetary policy for exchange rates to improve that current account, then that would cause AD to grow faster than the trend rate, causing demand pull inflation. So there I've put above the accepted range. Now this just allows that evaluative consideration as to what's more important, controlling inflation via interest rates or improving the current account via interest rates. Now, without that diagram, or if you just drew a standard AD1 shift to the right without showing that positive output gap, then your diagram is not really accurate or realistic to the given context or to the given situation. So you need to think about how you are using your diagrams, and the clues are in the case study. So what we've got now is we've got my counter arguments, and I've just included some theoretical points such as the Fisher equation, which I don't think students often use enough. Again, though, you can see in red, it tells you it's very costly, such intervention. It tells you it causes inflation, but again, what you need to make sure you're not doing is just listing the evidence without creating the analytical reason as to why, and why is that problematic for macroeconomic performance. So finally, I'm starting to close in on my overall judgment. There's some evaluation there throughout, but what we've got here is we've got my overall judgment. So in judgment to the question, and what I always like to do is I like to signpost it to the examiner that this is my overall evaluation. So look out for what my weighted points are, and make sure that you're not just repeating what you've previously said. Think about the bigger picture. Think about, for example, timescale. Think about priority and trade-offs. Think about what is most important in the short run compared to, for example, maybe which could be held out for the long run. So if you're closing on the productive capacity, like I've said before, probably you might not want to be focused on the trade account yet, unless that helps. What you should be probably doing is using interest rates to manage those potential inflation rates. And another point is the trade account. How much does it contribute towards GDP? It's the smallest percentage. So is that going to be something that you prioritize over other macroeconomic objectives where it contributes more to the performance? So they're the type of points that you need to be looking at for this question.